If every disagreement in your marriage or relationships turns into a debate, if you feel like you're always having to defend yourself, that things are coming at you and you have to defend, deflect, explain, if you feel like at the end of these arguments, which tend to never resolve themselves, that you feel exhausted and worn out and frustrated and more angry than when you began with a solution that isn't even close to being held, or there's no solution would be the better way of saying it. And the problem probably isn't about the argument itself or what's going on in the conversation. The problem likely is how you are responding, how you're being triggered and activated. And even when you're right, trust me, it's my way of doing things. It's a place where I lean into. She tells me something, I feel like I've got to defend. I'll tell her why I'm right. And it never, no matter how right I am, no matter how well I can prove and show it, it doesn't change a thing. Because she's not caring about right or wrong, and relationships aren't built on right or wrong. And so what's ended up happening is I'm getting triggered, and that triggering is unfortunately undoing my relationship, and the same is happening to you. Hey, it's Mark here again, and in this place of being activated, of being in arguments and always being in debates and feeling like you've got to defend yourself, what usually happens, again, the pattern is she says something that you feel is exaggerated, maybe is inaccurate, or completely off the mark, or it's a misunderstanding. And she's wanting you just to recognize her feelings, but you, me, feel like I've got to defend and show how she's wrong, so that once she can see how wrong she is, then she'll understand that where she came from and how she was accusing me was wrong as well, and she'll apologize and go, I'm so sorry, I was wrong. And the more often we do that, we get stuck in that trench. We can each predict how each other is going to respond. Even when we believe that if I only show her what the truth is, if I only can let her, if she can only see my point of view, everything will be okay. But again, that's operating from an activated position. I am in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn with that, as are you. And usually in this case, when we're talking about defending, you're in the fight mode of that. You're not withdrawing, you're not freezing, and you're certainly not fawning. And fawning is that the nice guy place of appeasing and being the, like, I'll do anything that you want, and kind of being that, showing up as that, the man who will do anything, even if it demoralizes them, even if they know it violates their integrity, or if it emasculates them. They will try to be the nice guy, because being that nice guy will hopefully change her. All of these are dysregulation. These are when our sympathetic nervous system is being activated. And so you hear, if you watched any of these videos, more than one or two or three, every one of them I'm saying the same thing. Why? Because this all starts with regulation in our nervous system. Anytime we come into a relationship, into a communication system, into an argument, into a situation where energy is flowing, especially if things are heightened, like in perimenopause, menopause, maybe in our previous years with our partner, we could ease in because maybe the triggering wasn't quite so fast, or maybe her energy wasn't quite so aggressive. And now things are kicking up, and it's almost always tied to us in our younger stage, from when we were young. I'm talking about boys here, from when we were in between 1.5 and 7 years old, where the wounds that we took on, and in the Toltec tradition, it's called the assemblage point, where we start assembling facts and truths about life, about mom and dad don't like me unless this. I'm only safe if this happens. For me, one of those assemblage points was, if I can show dad the truth, if I can show him that I'm right, that means I'm safe. So when I'm in a situation with my wife and she says something that isn't true, at least not through my lens, I am almost instantly triggered unless I can be aware and be regulated and catch myself in it before I go down into that dysregulated place, before that sympathetic nervous system kicks in and I'm, fighting for my life, or at least I believe I am. This is heightened, as all of you know who are listening to this, during that menopause journey. Things aren't the same. Things are much more intense. The emotions, the aggression sometimes, her physical discomfort, which means probably neither of you are sleeping well. The pulling back intimately, the even physically, maybe she doesn't want you to touch her. That was one of the things that my wife over time, she didn't like being touched. And so I felt rejected, which is another one of my core childhood wounds. So that's what this whole process of regulation is about. And until we regulate ourselves, we show up the same way over and over. And even if we want to, even if in our minds we think through and we want to do it a different way, we can't, because that the amygdala and the reptilian brain, that limbic system, takes over and takes control over and from this prefrontal cortex. We're not thinking, we're not conscious, we're not fully aware. We're being driven by that reptilian brain that thinks it's in a fight or flight situation, thinks its life is in jeopardy. So you're not wrong for wanting to prove that that what she's seeing is not quite accurate. You're not wrong for feeling like you're not safe, because it kind of feels that way, doesn't it? But once we get into this place of being able to regulate ourselves, a lot of that dissipates. When it's not about right or wrong, because it really isn't for her, as you well know, it isn't. You can think through this and look back on your most recent situation. As much as you want it to be about right or wrong or facts or that kind of stuff, that's not what she cares about at all. She's wanting you to be present. She's just wanting you to be aware of what's going on for her and being able to see if you can hold that emotion. Because again, for her, in many cases, she's out of control in herself and she knows it, and that scares her. And if you also are out of control, now you've got two out of control people. That means she can't trust you. She needs you to be the anchor here. And you may say, well, why do I have to be this? And I say because she's the one who's going through it. She can't control it. It's literally the chemicals running through her body are changing everything. And where she used to be able to control things and push them down and maintain, she doesn't have access to that anymore. If you remember when you were a young man, if you had high testosterone running through your system, I always talk about it being the do then think response. It's like, when I ask my teenage sons, like, what were you thinking? They just stare at you, because they weren't. The testosterone in them kicks in and us kicks in, and something snaps. We respond without thinking, and that's where they are. And it disturbs them as well. I can tell you from my wife and many other women I've spoken with, it disturbs them that they can't control that. It upsets them, and they're frustrated with themselves, and they're unsure of us, because what they're getting from us is not support, is not being able to hold the container, is not us not taking it personally. In other words, we take it personally, and then we respond to them and make them wrong and tell them how we can fix them, or in this case, what we're talking about in this particular section. So this debate that we get into doesn't solve anything. It pushes her further away. It makes her feel less safe, which oftentimes then equates into the physical realm, into the intimate realm. Because just like us, she's also being triggered. She's also in that sympathetic nervous system. She's also in fight and flight with herself and with us. And this is why it's imperative that we learn to regulate ourselves. And as much, I can feel it's like, well, why do I have to do that? You don't have to do it, but you're going to get the same cycle over and over. You're going to get on the back end, as if your relationship survives this, you're going to get on the back end of this 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the road. The average length of the menopause journey is 7 to 10 years. That's a long time. If you don't change, if you don't take steps to learn how to regulate yourself, what you do then is your relationship gets further and further apart, further and further apart. And the likelihood is, if you're here, because we men don't like to jump into anything too quickly unless the pain is big enough. If you're here, it's likely that you've already spent a couple of years in this and you don't even know where to go. You don't have any answers because you're still operating in what I call the Prince 1.0 or 2.0 mechanism, which is the tool set that you learned about relationship when you were in your late teens, early 20s. And you're trying to apply this to this new phase of life, which is totally different than anything that came before. And so it requires a different set of tools. It requires an upgrade and an initiation if you want to have a solid long-term relationship. And I'm talking an awful lot about your partner here because this is about menopause and midlife and men. But the truth about this whole thing is, the real truth is, it's about you first. You learning to regulate yourself doesn't only help you in your relationship with your partner, with your wife, it also helps with your children. It also helps in your employment. But most of all, it helps with yourself. If you start to understand who you are from the inside out and not rely on the outside world to dictate what your inside world is doing, when you can regulate from the inside, then her energy and emotions coming at you, you don't have to take it on. You can observe it, you can be present for it. You can love her through it and witness just the pain and suffering that she's going through. And because you can hold that, she will learn to trust you again. She will soften into that. She will know that she can rely on you. She will know that you're not going to run, because that's part of her fear as well. And many of you, if you're at this place, you're thinking about it. You're thinking about jumping out. What you're likely not thinking about is, where do you think you're going to jump into? If you imagine, if you're in this place of imagining where you're going to be, if you're not with your wife, if you feel like I can't take it anymore, and this isn't worth the fight, and you step out, what are you imagining this person's going to look like? Are they in their 30s, 40s, or are they in their mid to late 50s, maybe early 60s? Because what we don't think through as men, as we're jumping out because we're just tired of what's going on, and we're tired of being wrong, and we're tired of being abused, and we're not going to take it anymore, and I'm going to go out and jump into this, and jump into this relationship, maybe with somebody at work who's laughing at my jokes again and gives me some attention and energy, and maybe he says something about that I'm cute, or makes some kind of comment that lets me know that she's interested. Guess what? She's going to go through the same process. So unless you're willing to go into a relationship with somebody who's already been through menopause, then, my friend, it probably behooves you to stay with where you are and learn the interior workings, because this last half of our life is where the real work is. The first half, that was practice. Look around you. I have the gift of having done men's work for 22, 23 years now. And many of the men who I am in relationship with in different groups are 15, 20, 25 years older than me. I see what's coming for me. I see what's ahead of me. I see where many men are lost and their relationships are empty and they don't know how to do anything about it, and they fade off into death in a way that feels empty, lost, and unfulfilled. But there's a different way. That different way is starting by regulating yourself and your interior world. And from there, once you're regulated, then you can reframe the world. Then you can reframe through some of the tools I offer. Then you can show up in a different way and go, wow, I see this as a different possibility. I see she's doing her work. I'm going to do my work. And that reframing allows you then to take responsibility for what's happening. And as I've mentioned in some of these other videos, That responsibility, that R word, responsibility, in certain ways can feel really weighted, really heavy. You've already got the responsibility of work. You've already got the responsibility of finances. You've already got the responsibility of maybe somehow taking care of kids and having a house and fixing cars and doing all these kind of things here. Being a husband, being a father, all these responsibilities. This is responsibility to yourself and to your kingdom in a different way. And once you understand that, once you understand what I'm teaching about with that, and you understand what this place of taking full responsibility for your life is about, then anything is possible from that standpoint. Then this incredible energy rises in you, and you understand what your purpose is. You become a servant to your kingdom. And the servant is the greatest, most powerful force in the kingdom. The true king, the honorable king, the king of integrity, the powerful king, is not about power over, it's power it's being in service to that kingdom. And when you find what you're meant to be in service to, then you and your queen can rule your kingdom in a way that will ripple across all that you touch. And that's how you rise up. That's how you become the next better, bigger version of yourself. That's the initiation. That's the rite of passage I'm inviting you into. If this at all feels interesting, if it calls to you, if there's something I've said that like you feel that with inside you, it's like you want to be a part of that, and you want to be something bigger than you are right now, something more that's calling forth from you. If you want to change the relationship with yourself and with your partner, if you want to paint a different picture of your future than what you're probably currently looking at, which is like, what am I going to be? Am I going to be like, do I jump out of a relationship? Is she going to jump out of a relationship? Am I going to live, forever as just roommates on a good day? There is a different possibility here. So look at the materials down below this video. There's stuff with quizzes and with webinars and the courses that I also provide here. I'd love to see you be a part of this journey with me if it calls to you. This isn't for every man, I get that. In fact, it's not for very many men, because these kind of calls to go and do the inner work is something that most of us run from. But there are a few of you on this who are watching this and will have that call, that will feel the pull. And for those of you who do, I invite you to look into this and join me on this journey. Be well.